Mike and Andy, thanks for coming. So you guys are with Citizen DOGE.
Correct. Yep.
That's right.
Okay. Normally I don't really even do introductions, but I guess since we have multiple people here, so we have Mike McEleney and Andy Schaalman with Citizen DOGE, and we have
Brett Williams
with the Carroll County GOP
Republican Committee.
Yeah.
Chairman
of the New Hampshire Carroll County Committee.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Full disclosure, I am also a member of the New Hampshire Carroll County Committee. But thanks for coming, all of you. And I've been seeing you guys on Facebook quite a bit recently.
Yep.
And what exactly is Citizen DOGE for anybody that doesn't know?
Yep. I guess I can start, and then Andy can jump in as well. So I'll give you actually kind of the history of it, and I won't go too much into the weeds, but basically, so I worked in the Trump campaign during the 24 cycle here in New Hampshire. So I was Hillsborough County Director during the primary, and then during our general election, I basically was the only staffer, so I was running the whole state for Trump. And after the election, I got brought onto the inauguration committee. So it was best moment of my life. Got to work in D.C. for about a month, made tons of connections, was on the floor of the inauguration. I mean, stuff that I couldn't even dream of happening. After I got back from D.C., and to rewind it a little bit, we had prior conversations, me and Andy, and so Andy worked on Lily Tang Williams' campaign, so he can go into some of the history of that when after I'm done here. But we had conversations right after the election, before I even went to D.C. This was in December timeframe, kind of right after the election. And my question was, what's next, right? Okay, we got Trump in. What's the next move? How can we continue this momentum? And then I had other volunteers that worked with me, the Trump campaign, saying the same thing. Trump's in. What are we doing? So my initial thing was we got to focus on local action, getting people involved in the state. We got Trump and his president. Now we got to clean up our state. So that's the next big thing. And so we had prior discussions even before me going to D.C. I get back from D.C. here in New Hampshire. Just the theory comes up again. What's next? I got in contact with someone from the DOGE department who was tasked to set up DOGE teams in the 50 states. It's basically doing local action DOGE in the states. Here in New Hampshire, we have a COGE team. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that a little bit. Kelly had set up a COGE team here. So the idea of starting a DOGE team would, at least here in New Hampshire, was going to be put on hold because they already have a COGE team, and then obviously Democrats would be against it. So I said, okay, well, I've already been talking about starting a group. I already worked with grassroots and volunteer movements. I was like, why don't we just start a grassroots DOGE movement? So it's just kind of the short version of how everything kind of came together. And then just coming up with a name, basically, okay, grassroots, DOGE, what are we doing? And just kind of someone said the word citizen, and here we are, started Citizens DOGE. So I can let Andy jump in and tell his version of it.
So my history with this is, as Mike said, I was with Lily Tang Williams' campaign last year for Congress. I was her research director. And over the course of the months I traveled around the state, being with her and occasionally running to Mike at events, it was very clear that the enthusiasm among sort of rank and file voters was high, but the actual structure in place to keep them informed about who all the candidates were and what all their backgrounds were was lacking. And the reason we knew that was because Maggie Goodlander was skating almost all the way through on just being a Nashua girl who had gone to Yale and had served a time in the Naval Reserves, I think, and had been, connected with all these politicians and was earnest and cheerful and, was the next face of New Hampshire politics, at least in the D.C. delegation. And if you even endeavored to turn over that rock, you would see all these things underneath about just how much the Democratic Party was buying that seat through her. And it told me that if this doesn't change in New Hampshire, they're going to, not only is Maggie Goodlander going to be entrenched in the D.C. delegation as long as she wants, it's going to be a lot more Maggie Goodlanders for a long time unless the grassroots is shored up. And over the course of the winter, I think both before and after Mike was in Washington, we had conversations about this exact subject. So what do we do to prevent this from happening again? What do we do to enable ordinary people to actually make an impact in their local towns and have that move up, hopefully, to the party structure so that, the live free or die way of life can be preserved. And, we've started this project as a means of trying to to balance those scales, because it's just going to keep happening like it's happened in the past unless we do something different.
How much progress have you guys had?
You can jump in and then I can jump in.
Well, we're meeting with a lot of town and county chapters, and the reception's been really good. As we were talking before we started recording, we're doing a weekly podcast now with Julian Aciard of Blue Collar Intellectual, who was also Chris Bright's campaign manager in District 1 last year. We're also connecting with people who are with grassroots outfits both in New Hampshire and New Hampshire chapters of national organizations like Walkaway and Turning Point. There was actually another organization that we first became acquainted with in Hampton, out by the seacoast, who's just somebody running a recording studio out there who is getting connected in conservative circles and knows some people who are politically connected as well. And what Mike and I think, I won't speak for him, but what I've noticed is it really seems to me that most people around the state in New Hampshire politics don't know about the intricate web of all these people who are not necessarily political insiders, but who want more local control over their towns, over their schools, and just may not necessarily have the means, the wherewithal, or the enthusiasm yet to actually go out and do it. What we're trying to do right now is to provide a framework for them to all know each other, all be part of the same network, and, as I said, return things to a more respectable place, and people having control over the political process.
Yeah, and to piggyback off that, so your question was, how things have been going. So we've been doing it about 2 months, probably just as long as your radio or your podcast here. But the reception's been good. Like Andy said, we're meeting with a lot of GOP groups. We're doing a lot of events. Obviously, tonight we're doing a fundraiser. We have another fundraiser next Tuesday. We have an action meeting next Friday. So it's almost like daily we're at least getting out and just meeting people. Last night we met with the Manchester, New Hampshire GOP, talked to a candidate. So it's really been really great. Our first meeting, we had like 50 people show up in our first meeting in somebody's basement, which was kind of cool. We were just like, hey, come meet in this basement in the middle of Wilton, New Hampshire, which people are like, what the heck is that? But yeah, we had a really good crowd. We have a guy that does video and photography. So Andy was out there doing interviews with people and why they want to get involved. What are they looking to do? So we're looking to just, spice things up, bring some vigor into the state. And the reason, going back to earlier, the reason we were starting this is because there's all these little splintered, fractured grassroots movements, and then you have like the establishment, and there's all these infighting and wars and drama within the Republican Party. And as maybe we might have alluded to, but the Democrats are very well organized, very well funded. There are some drama, especially happening, but they always keep it in the backgrounds, right? There's never public facing. Where us on the Republican side, it's fighting on Facebook or arguing or rah, rah, rah. And, unfortunately, we just keep losing elections and nothing's getting done. So we wanted to create an organized, structured grassroots movement here to bring people together, have goals, objections that we're focusing on, and kind of, shut out some of the noise in some of these drama. I mean, it's impossible to get rid of all drama, but if we have goals, missions, an organized structure, people can join our ideas and our values. I think that will, and any of the noise, we've even said we have ground rules for our group. If someone's at our first meeting, someone yelled and called someone names, and we're just like, "Yep, you're not coming back." Like that's it. There's no room for that kind of stuff. Yes. So that's where structured. And if somebody breaks a rule, it's like, hey, this is a free group. You're welcome to come and go. You're not forced to be here, but if you're not going to align with our values, we can't have this.
So you worked on the Lily Tang Williams campaign, and one thing that one of you guys might know this, but how much are the Democrats outspending the Republicans in New Hampshire?
In the Lily campaign, I think it was between 6-1 and 8-1 in terms of the coffers for the two campaigns in the end. And most of what Goodlander had in her coffer at the very end was not just out of state, but overwhelmingly from New York, California, and D.C.
Mm-hmm. We see that a lot in the state rep elections too, around in this area. With that being said, how have you guys done anything to try and expose where their money is coming from and how much of it is influencing New Hampshire, because I think the Senate race that we have coming up, they're estimating that you're going to have like $100 million in order to be a player in the race.
That's insane. Yeah.
For a state with a population of 1.5 million.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a good eye-opener for people if we could expose where that money is coming from and how much influence it has on our state. And I don't know if people realize it. Like, New Hampshire's a purple state, but we have a red legislator. Our local state, our state house, our state senate, and our governorship's all red. So we have this red bullseye in the middle of New England that outside sources want to turn blue at any cost. They don't have to spend that much money in Massachusetts anymore, so they're just going to start funneling it up here. So have you guys worked on any of that? Any grassroots initiatives to change that?
I can jump in, and then Eddie, if you have any thoughts on it. Yeah, like you said, I mean, money's coming in from God knows where. I mean, we had campaign events where Kamala Harris was coming to speak in New Hampshire, and there was buses from who knows where showing up, you know, busing in supporters. So not only are they sending in money from outside states, they're sending in supporters from outside states. And so this is just, and part of, you know, the DOGE thing is there's corruption everywhere, right? Like, you see it in every government agency, you see it everywhere. Now we're like uncovering even local towns are just spending money that they don't have. And, you know, so we're starting to unpeel these onions. You know, we have an email that people can send us tips or the website they can come but yeah, that's something we can look at and see. But I mean, you know, these people, you can almost tell where the money's coming from, right? Like, her husband's Jake Sullivan, who is a senior advisor for Biden, who's involved in all this kind of crazy stuff right now with the auto pens situation. But I mean, they're partners with the Clintons, and they just go knee deep in the swamp. She worked in D.C. for a while, so, you know, you can almost assume, right? And then, as you said, New Hampshire has under 2 million people here, and it's like, the money's drying up here in New Hampshire, especially when I go to these GOP groups. It's like the fundraising's drying up, the money's drying up. So they almost have to go to outside states and entities. So you can just assume where the money's coming from.
Do you think the national GOP is kind of given up on New Hampshire?
Ooh, that's a great question. I believe so in some ways.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, you might be able to speak to it, obviously, but
Well, I don't know a lot, but I know that I think there are some national organizations that might be targeting New Hampshire for 2026, because I think they see that the state is totally red, you know, on the state level, and then we're sending blue people to the federal level, and I think they see an opportunity to, if they spend some money in New Hampshire, they might be able to flip some seats.
And to piggyback on that, I just thought of this, that if the Democrats gain, God forbid, if they gain in the House next year in D.C., the first-in-the-nation primary in 2028 is going to be even more of a narrative push by the Democrats to say, see, we made gains in New Hampshire in 2026, and now we're putting forward the person who's going to defeat Donald Trump and defeat the MAGA movement once and for all. If we do not shore things up in New Hampshire in the next, not even year and a half, the next year, that is in play. Because the first-of-the-nation primary, even though New Hampshire's got 4 electoral votes, there's added weight to what happens
forever.
here,
Yeah.
and they know it has added weight, and they can use it to enhance their narrative if they can get results here.
Yeah, because I think that with New Hampshire going, I think that the amount of people that have moved to New Hampshire, the extra people we've gotten over the last 4 or 5 years, the majority of them have been Republicans from what I've heard. So we are gaining a stronghold in that sense, but the problem is, isn't it well known that Republicans don't really come out during the midterms, or if they don't like a candidate, they just won't show up.
Or for town elections.
Especially. And I think there was some legislation to try and force the state to have town elections the same time as state elections as well, which would kind of try to mitigate that and get everybody to vote at the same time.
Because some people don't even know, to your point, don't even know when the voting is. Isn't some in March, and there's some other different dates?
Yeah, most towns are
It's
in March.
primarily
Kind of
March.
confusing, yeah.
So I've heard someone say that we're red in November and blue during March.
Yeah, it's seasonal, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest problems. And then the other thing too is if you came here from a blue state, I mean, you kind of you're kind of running away from the problem that you didn't organize enough in your own state to begin with.
It's a problem that's been created. This is my belief, and I know it's shared by a lot of other people. It's been created by a class of people, the people who occupy the top rungs of political power, the people who occupy the leading posts in the leading law firms, the people who dominate the education system. And there's an element of those people who definitely came out for Maggie Goodlander last year. I could see it in the way that her campaign very skillfully published opinion pieces calling her the greatest thing since sliced bread every time something was published in the Concord Monitor or the Union Leader. Those people are a big element in what's making the state blue or bluer in spite of all the red that we like to see and that we have. But there's danger of that slipping away.
Yeah, it's the intellectual class, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me that they're almost voting against their own interests, I think. I mean, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, they come here, right, and like kind of what you said, they come here and you would think they're escaping, high taxes or, a lot of people during COVID came to New Hampshire, but they end up still voting blue in some way, in some areas, or just don't get involved at all. It's like, wouldn't you come here to because you're escaping communism or whatever? Or they come here and continue to vote these same paths because maybe, like I said, the GOP isn't reaching out, or they're not connecting, or maybe they don't know who to vote for. And then, like I said, it's confusing when to vote. So either they don't show up to vote, or they're just, I'll just vote the way I used to vote. Or I'm not really sure. We should probably find some and ask them, like, hey, sit them down and try to pick their brain a little bit, what their thought process is in all this. But it's interesting.
We have so much money that comes funneling into here. I mean, we had one state rep that ran as an independent, and that person raised $20,000. She's not even a state rep. They raised $20,000 for a seat they didn't win, and that seat only pays $100 a year to begin with. So there's obviously something a lot more going on here, I think.
And it's scary that money's coming in for state, like local or state rep races. It's like it's this
and I would
outside
say
money too.
The atmosphere of the elections too are different, because 10 years ago nobody knew who their state rep was, and there wasn't so much mudslinging going on for these elections, and now it's almost like a national election would be.
Yeah, it's like nonstop hate online, and
I never saw advertisements for state reps on Facebook, and it's not cheap to run a Facebook ad.
No.
If you want it to be effective, you got to spend about $100 a day or so.
Wow.
If you want to have a good reach, and to see the local elections just going that way, it's kind of it's troubling, I think. So what you guys said, you've been doing a lot of events.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about those a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, you want to jump in on this one?
Sure. The one of the many things that we have focused on, in addition to meeting with some grassroots people and some town and county GOP chapters, is finding other avenues to either protest or sort of make a showing somewhere where there may or may not be other groups or other media outlets on the ground, and watching people like Jake Sullivan when he came to UNH Franklin Pierce Law's commencement 2 weeks ago. I was there with a group of 5 others from us. Mike tipped me off that this was coming, and there was a small circle of people who we know who were aware that he was coming and that Maggie was probably going to be there as well, but nobody else showed interest.
Oh, Republicans don't like to protest.
So that was just a natural. That just presented a natural opening for us to say, well, we know who these people are, even if many of even the people who are processing and graduating and their families may not know, and even if they're politically sympathetic to the other side, we should at least make a display of showing them who they are and saying, you're not going to get away with this cloak, hiding away who you really are forever. And so I put together some signs and got a group of 5 of us plus our cameraman Andy together, and we went there and we spoke to the police presence that was on the ground beforehand to just let them know, hey, we won't we won't cause a stink. We're just going to stand here and hold signs and mind our own business otherwise. And we got a lot of conversations and handed out a lot of cards. So it was a good afternoon spent in Concord.
And
how was the reception?
Well, for the people who actually came over and talked to us, it was positive. There were definitely some who seemed to have political sensibilities on the other side, but who only deduced it after talking to us for a minute or two. For most of the rest of the people, and perhaps not coincidentally, a lot of these people were coming up and talking to us as the crowd was really thinning out near the very end, hours after the commencement. They were relieved that somebody was actually, not that they were looking for somebody to protest, but somebody actually understood, oh, this figurehead who spoke to our graduates today is not all that he claims to be. And regardless of what their own political sensibilities might have been, they were willing to talk to us, and they sort of gave us an attaboy. And one very nice gentleman even took a photo op with myself and one of the other people who was there. So there were more people sympathetic to our side than we perhaps anticipated.
Yeah, and I'll jump into so obviously you guys got some good footage of Jake Sullivan walking by and Maggie Goodlander walking by, and we also got a video clip of Maggie's mother came up to our group and had a conversation with us. So it kind of proves that someone needs to step up and do something. And before the event, I called the candidates, called the GOP, and said, hey, you guys need to be on the ground for this. Like, oh, I'm busy that day, or oh, I don't want to step on any toes, or blah blah blah.
Whose toes would they be stepping on?
Yeah, who knows? I don't know. It's just a lot of feckless, spineless Republicans, basically, or they don't want to be seen as, the image or whatever it is, right? And so I was just like, well, someone's got to show up, so we will, And I even said, we don't mind being the leader on this, but we need people to back us up and help. And so we actually got some viral clips that went. Like I said, we got an interview with Maggie's mother, which was very rare, and got some good footage of Maggie, and they all saw us there, like, oh. And Andy had a couple funny signs, and so even though there was like 6 of us, it was like, we got a couple views, people sharing our posts, and people like thanking us for being out there. I will say the next event, so as you're asking about what events we've been doing, the next day there was Rachel Levine, who is a prior Health and Human Service Secretary, who's a dude or whatever it is, was giving the commencement address as well to an all-women's college in Massachusetts. And you can't even make this stuff up, right? And so you can look at our socials and see some of it. And we got 6 or 7 of us showed up, and we got a viral video of some leftist crazy, like, losing her mind, literally wearing a Transformers shirt. Like, I couldn't make this up. It had a Transformers shirt on, yelling and screaming, you guys should be protecting women. I don't even know what she was saying. You can watch the video, just swearing incessantly, screaming in the middle of the parking lot, walking down the street, yelling at other just people walking by the school or just in the neighborhood, trying to rile up people to attack like 6 people with a sign, just standing there, hey, we're here protecting women's rights. What are you guys doing, bringing this dude here and disgracing all these women at an all-women's college? So it's bizarre. But yeah, so this liberal went unhinged, and the video's probably got 7,000 or 8,000 views. A couple media outlets have reached out to one of the women that was on the scene. So this is almost another subsection of what we're trying to do. We called it Citizens DOGE Action. Basically, we can be the front people on this. Like I said, we don't mind leading these things. If someone's going to be feckless and weak, don't attach your name to it, but just send us either resources or send us some people to get involved. And we can I don't mind being the bad guy, putting our name on some of these events. So we're actively looking for more events. So anyone out there that has a protest they want to do, or has something they want to get eyes on, or just, getting people to show up to something, we can rally the troops, because, we're building grassroots coalitions and get out there and put some eyes on these things.
And to follow on that point, with the reluctance of the Republicans, certainly the established Republicans, to actually show up at events like this, it almost strikes me as though many of them have become so interested in protecting themselves from the negative image the other side has already crafted for them and will never let go of, that they almost lose the instinct of, well, it doesn't matter what they say about me, because they're going to despise my guts anyway. And our point of view, I think what Mike and I have in common is we both know that the urgency far outweighs anybody's feelings about what the other side thinks. And we know that we can go to these events, bring people who will be responsible, who will be upbeat, and who will just make a point and then go home. Because ultimately, we know that it's incumbent upon us to present our best face as conservatives, as people who are countering, these leftist establishment people. There's a different set of expectations on us, but we know we can handle it, and we don't care about what the other side might say.
It's definitely a double standard, I would say, because I think you're never going to get Republicans out there with signs, it feels like, but every weekend you can see that there's Democrats in how many different parts of the state, and they just stand out there with signs that don't even make any sense.
It's the same ones, though.
It's the same ones over and over.
Must be paid and coordinated. We had a conversation yesterday about it, and it was like you saw during the 2020 and then the George Floyd riots, right? They were like burning police stations and flipping cars and attacking people, right? And then if Republicans ever did that, it would be like, like the January 6th, and we're taking over the government and tearing, all this stuff. And so I think that's handicapped a lot of these people. Like, candidates are like, oh, I don't want to touch that, or, establishments are like, so there needs to be, after doing a couple of these events, there needs to be a group on the right that is doing it. And like I said, I had someone from Turning Point, so they're spreading out, and like you said, some major groups are coming into the state. Turning Point, one of them, they have chapters growing at some of these campuses, and I reached out to them because they have a chapter at UNH, maybe 30 or 40 kids. I said, this would be perfect for you guys to get out there, and I got hit with basically same thing. Oh, we can't get involved in that. It's not a good look, and it's the corporate structure and the red tape. Like, some of these national organizations, they don't want to, because they don't want to be
conservative organizations.
Yeah, they don't want to see, like Andy was just saying, they don't want like the backlash or whatever, or they don't want the media presence, and so they're kind of handicapped. So you have literal students that would probably come to this thing, but they said, no, don't do it because we don't want any negative press. And so
what is the point of their organization to begin with then?
Yeah, that's a great question. You maybe have to ask them. I actually have one of their leaders coming to speak at my next event. Maybe we can ask them that. But they literally wouldn't give us help, and they said, "Oh, at my graduation, we had a bunch of Palestinian people show up and protest and caused a ruckus at my graduation, and it almost ruined my day." And so for us, it was like I even was talking to the group. I was like, "Okay, let's just not cause any issues." And they're gonna be spotlighting on it, right? If somebody yells us, or fights somebody or something gets thrown, like I said, it would have been a major thing and it would have caused backlash. So I'm like, guys, it's a graduation. Just be respectful for the graduates. This isn't about them. We're just calling light to what Jake Sullivan's doing and what Maggie Goodlander is. And I think we did an amazing job. Like I said, we had Maggie's mother come up to us and people were thanking us for being there. But yeah, we were respectful. We weren't yelling and screaming. We had, I want to have dialogue with people. I don't want to just start yelling and screaming, and that's kind of what our group is doing. We need to get away from the attack, because it's just not working. We need to be respectful and just, show up, like make our presence known, but, just have a sign and open dialogue with people and just be aware. But I think we did a really good job of holding that line and not going overboard.
And I think in addition to understanding there's a delicate balance, we both know, and I think like our entire group knows, or is starting to understand the seriousness of purpose behind the need for what it is that we're doing. But in a particular context like a protest or a sine wave, you have to see a certain amount of the absurdity in it. And we knew that there were going to be people, to follow up on what I was saying before about what the general reactions were at that protest. There were some people who we could hear muttering under their breath as they went by. As I held up a sign saying, "What's up, Steve?" reference to what our now former president called our former national security advisor. They didn't understand the sign at all, and they just were just shaking their head and probably saying weird things about us when we walked away. But like I care, like
Who
we
cares
care.
anymore? Yeah.
And with respect to the Rachel Levine event in Northampton, Mass, it's just like it really is like a Babylon Bee story where Rachel Levine is giving the commencement address at an all-women's college. I mean,
you can't make it up.
Rachel Levine is literally, indirectly, but is literally one of the principal reasons in a roundabout way that Elon bought Twitter, because Twitter censored the Babylon Bee's story about Rachel Levine as Woman of the Year.
Was that the story?
That was the story.
Huh.
Wait, he won Woman of the Year?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, Woman of the Year. Yeah, here we go.
Really?
Yes.
Woman of the Year is a dude. Welcome to America.
I think most people can be reasoned with. So going back to what you said, that's why I called this a grand discourse. We need discourse. We can't be screaming at each other and yelling at each other.
It just doesn't work, right?
But you also have to bring facts to the table, and you also have to hold true to those facts. You can't have, like, one of the biggest things that's going on that really pushed me to get more involved in politics is I got 2 little girls. I don't want them competing with males in sports.
Terrible, yeah.
Or having to change in front of them, which I can't remember where the story was, but there was a student that got in trouble because she complained about having to change in a girl's locker room.
She got in trouble?
Yeah, with a boy present because of what she said about the boy.
It's horrible. That is really.
And this whole idea that we all have to change our wording of what we say, like
form and
like if you look like a woman and you sound like a woman, I'm probably not going to second guess that you're a woman. But if you are clearly a man dressed up as a woman, then I'm not going to call you a woman. Like, it's just not going to happen. Who is it? Blair White is one of the biggest influencers that's trans. And he looks like a woman. If you looked at him, like, you wouldn't be able to guess.
That's what's scary now too. It's like sometimes you can't even tell. It's like, I don't know how much makeup is needed, but holy God, yeah,
that's a lot of work is done.
I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure because it's easy to hide stuff when you're on a camera, but if you saw them in person, maybe it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But this whole idea, it's like 2 + 2 = 5. It's newspeak. It's and this whole idea that we can just bully people into accepting this is wrong. And I think that the general population, the majority of people actually agree with that, but the loudest people in the minority are the ones that are driving this and forcing society to comply with it. And I don't agree with it. And that's I don't want to leave this behind for my kids and my grandkids. And we just need to really just speak up.
Yeah, and to Andy's point, and we had a conversation on the way up here about something similar to this, but his sense of urgency, right, with the fourth turning stuff, it's like we have not much time. Now Trump's in, so good things are happening, but it's like, you can see the Republicans are turning against him. You have all these rhinos in there and the Democrats, and so he needs backup reinforcements, and this is why we need to get people involved. And the original thing was this, it's like, Trump isn't going to come and fix your local school board. He's not going to come in and fix your local town. He's going to do stuff to make it easier and a lot of good executive orders, and I'm not taking any credit away from him. But I even think that he would acknowledge, like, the people need to step up and do something, right? It's not just some white knight in shining armor going to come in and, hey, guys, sit on your couch. I'm going to fix your tax. I'm going to fix your school boards. I'm going to get rid of the transsexual stuff. And it's like, no. Like, we need to step up and fight, get involved, and then he'll help in certain areas, but it's a full-on war, and people need to realize that you can't just be on your couch.
It's a culture war.
Yeah, and so the conversation we had earlier, we were talking about this Rachel Levine stuff and all these things. It's like, yeah, it's really coming to a local community, like you were saying. It's like your kids. It's some people. You see it on the news, you see it on a blog or something. Like, but when it hits home, when it happens to your children or in your school system, it's like, oh wow, this is actually really. And people wake up one day and because like you think of like, oh, I saw something online, or oh, it's in the big cities this is happening, or in Democrat strongholds, but then you wake up one day and your kid complains like, oh, it was a dude in my locker room, and you're like, I'm in Effingham, New Hampshire, what the heck's going on? It's like, and it gives you the motivation to step up and show up and say what's going on. And like you say, you don't want to leave this to your kids, because then they're going to just, passing the buck. And that's what we've been doing for the longest time. Just keep passing the buck down to the future generations. It's like, we need to step up now and protect it, because eventually it could just go off the cliff. And that's what the state of emergency is. It's like, we're at a breaking point here.
We've been passing the buck, not just there. Look at our national debt. Look at the inflation that we have and the price of homes.
On every issue. Yeah.
That's just, we've been printing money and just passing it on to future generations, and it's eventually we won't be able to just keep printing money. I heard just the other day that we spent more on interest on the national debt than we do on national defense.
I think that's true, yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah.
Eventually, we won't be able to pay for our national defense because we're too busy paying the Federal Reserve interest on our national debt. And then we're not the largest world superpower.
Well, then they feminized them too, right? They had like the transsexuals and all this stuff. And so, yeah, luckily Pete Hegseth is doing a good job in cleaning some of that stuff up. But, yeah, it is scary stuff that's happening.
Do you have any criticisms of the Trump administration that you've seen so far?
I wouldn't say criticisms. Like I said, I see a lot of these Republicans kind of either turning their back or just being spineless and feckless. And so some of the DOGE cuts, I'm like, what's going on with this stuff? Or some of these bills that he's trying to pass. It's such an uphill battle, and he's only one man. I mean, he's put a good administration around him, but they're also getting constantly attacked, and so they need reinforcements. And so, yeah, I mean, it's nothing specific, I would say. It's like negative. I think he's trying to do a good job, but yeah, I'm just really disappointed in what some of the people around, not just his top people, but just Republicans around him that are just weak and feckless and not pushing these agendas forward.
Yeah, I'd say the Congress is not doing their job to support him. I think that's really the biggest problem right now. You can't have really any control over the courts and what they're doing, but Congress could pass a law to back up what he's doing, and then we'd be like, okay, well, it's 2 versus 1. You think they'd be able to do something like that, but they're just on vacation.
And their margin is so small. Their margin of majority is so small that Trump has to come down personally to Capitol Hill to make sure that every last person in the caucus, save maybe the 1 or 2 stragglers that maybe he really can't count on or doesn't like, will support his bills. I mean, this big, beautiful bill just the other day passed by, what was it, one vote?
One vote.
That's unsustainable.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of these people that support him during the election, they just turn their backs on him once it's over.
Well, they just think everything's going to be okay now, and it's just like, well, the Democrats are never going to stop.
No.
So, we can't either. So you can't just say, well, hey, everything's great.
And that's
we got
the
Trump.
point of why we started this. I woke up the day after the election, and just for some reason, I was like, what's next? What's next? Yeah. Where Republicans tend to, okay, we're going to go on vacation for 6 months or go back to work and live our daily lives like nothing ever happened. And we talked about earlier how presidential races are the big fluffy thing, and then it's this lull, and then people don't get involved in the local races. Obviously the turnout goes down during the midterms. And it's for some reason, I just had this sense of urgency. And it was weird because I'm like, oh, Trump's in, everything's be great. But then just something in my mind triggered is what's next? What's next? He is only one person, right? And no one has the energy. I was reading something, Trump doesn't sleep, right? And so this is a point of the Congress, they're probably sleeping all day, like Biden or something like that. And Trump is just working 24/7, and no one's keeping up with this man. And, so we need to get involved and just at least support what's going on and put pressure on some of these Congress people that are, like you said, are doing jack shit, to be honest. They're just kind of just skating by, and a lot of them probably didn't even like Trump. They're just riding the coattails.
Absolutely,
and now, like you were just saying, they're just like, okay, Trump's in, cool, I'm going to go take my money from the pharmaceutical companies or do whatever I'm doing and not to be supportive of what he's trying to pass.
Well, they've been supporting the status quo all along. Yeah. It's not going to change just because Trump's in office. And
correct.
Trump's only going to be in there for another 4 years. So
biding their time, yeah.
And
third term.
Yeah.
The most...
He'll be 100 still in there in office or something.
The most critical time is between now and the midterms, because if we lose the midterms, it's all over. We don't have 4 years. We have less than 2 now.
Yep.
And what they do last time they took over, the Democrats, they just impeached him.
Yeah.
And just mucked everything up. And so we should let people know that Trump's actually on the ballot in 2026, and you got to get off your couch and go vote.
And to the point about the midterms and about the momentum that Democrats get when they're in the position of chasing an otherwise pretty feckless, top levels of at least the standard Republican Party, is that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez became a media star even before she was actually elected to Congress.
Yeah.
She just won her primary in June or July of 2018 over an incumbent who had been in office for 20 years in a district everybody knew was going to go Democrat, and suddenly they had their new star and a new face to maybe not necessarily lead the resistance, but another means of appealing to the young, to saying, here is somebody who speaks for you. Here is somebody who is one of you. The resistance just got another boost. This is who the Democrats are, as we were saying before. Like, there is such an unceasing belief that they are morally and intellectually superior, and that they have the means of controlling the narrative to just command that always and everywhere, that we can never relax. We'd like to, but we just can't.
Yeah, after the 24 election, I noticed that a lot of people that were Republicans were basking in the glory of the election when they, like we just said, they should have been trying to recruit more people to join the Republican Party, to be more involved in their local government, and to start really understanding how things are working, where it's so big. Like you said, he's one person. All these Republicans that are not helping him in Congress, they're not going to. They're never going to. And how much pressure can we put on them that they will care? I mean, if they only pass that bill by one vote,
yeah,
that's a lot more seats that we got to win in 2026, and that's a lot more money that we need to start raising, and a lot more education that we need to start pushing towards social issues that Democrats are pushing on everybody, and they, like you said, they think that they're the superior viewpoint of it,
and recognize that they are certain of their own moral and intellectual superiority, crafting narratives to counter that instinctively, immediately. That's the thing that this is just my observation. I sense it's shared by a lot of people. I can't confirm that, but just listening, for example, to Russell Prescott debate Chris Pappas in the NHPR debates on the radio last year. I was driving back in my car from some event where I was with Lily, and I was listening to the debate. And, of course, the moderators let Chris control the debate. But Russell, who seemed like a perfectly nice guy and a good guy, was stating his positions very directly and plainly, and saying, that the Democrats haven't done a good job, and here's how I would be different. But just the passion that the Democrats have, the glibness that they are able to speak with in these forums because they know the media is on their side, it just creates this wall that most conservative and Republican or just liberty-minded candidates can't jump over, because they don't inherently have a mindset that is instinctively aggressive, of taking away their cloak of moral and intellectual superiority immediately.
I think one thing that Republicans could do is shine a light on the outrage that they're trying to produce on everything that Republicans are doing. Every hearing that we're having at the State House, Democrats are watching them, and they're clipping everything that they can, and they're trying to create outrage out of every positive thing that happens for the citizens. And that's something that we could start doing, where they're saying that public education is under fire because they're voting to expand EFAs, but let's show people that public education is failing.
Yeah.
And
that they're spending more money on education regardless.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how much you spend on education.
Never enough.
It's never enough. And when you try to offer an alternative solution, and even like homeschool kids, private school kids, they'd perform better. And we need to make the conversation about the education of the child.
Yeah, and to jump in real quick, because I met with a gentleman who's a lawyer for Cornerstone, and I was at an event, and he was saying that bill just got passed. I can't quote the bill, but I do have it in my notes, that July 1st they have to state their the school systems have to state their ratio on expenditures, I believe. And basically what's shocking when he was reading it is a lot of this money is going to the administration. So you have like principals, vice principals, all these little, and they're making whatever 100, 200 grand a year. Superintendents,
like
yeah.
Assistant super,
and you
like
have
multiple assistants to the superintendents, like.
Yeah, and the teachers' salaries have actually either flatlined or slightly decreased over the years, and so the school system.
But the employment has gone up. The number of people they employ in the schools has gone up, but the teacher pay is
flatlined,
flatlined.
And yeah, so the argument, like you were saying, is like, oh, we need more funding it's helping the students, or you don't want to take away money from the teachers. But then once these are released, it's like a lot of this is going to administration. The teachers aren't getting that money. The students aren't really getting that money. And like you said, you're just throwing money at stuff, and it's like going to administration costs. If people actually look at some of these things, it's like, oh, okay. And so they're fighting it every tooth and nail to hide some of these things. But if we peel back some of these curtains, and we see, we can blow their argument out of the water. But it's just getting eyes on these kind of things.
And there's, to my knowledge, there hasn't been substantive proof generated by any of the Democrats' claims that people are not receiving their Social Security checks because of DOGE cuts. Yet that's something it seems like Democrats are saying every day, and not just in Washington, D.C. With respect to the presumptive Dems nominee for the Senate next year, I've just been combing what Chris Pappas has been saying for the last week or two, and he is going to town on Medicaid all the time. Oh, my God. These cuts the MAGA Republicans are putting in, that Trump is putting in, seniors aren't getting their Medicaid checks, so they're going to stop getting them any day. It's like, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? But, again, knowing that the media is on their side, knowing that the whole ecosystem.
No fact checkers on the other side.
All the fact checkers are fact checking the conservatives. They don't need to demonstrate proof of any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they call the EFAs vouchers, and they're not vouchers. But they will constantly say it over and over and over again because they're not called out on it through the media.
Repeat the lie enough, then it becomes the truth.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Who said that?
Right.
It was Hitler.
So, Andy,
Oh no, we're in trouble now.
I think it was Goebbels.
Yeah.
It could have been.
So you said that you run a podcast on YouTube,
I do.
and you talk about the fourth turning.
Yes.
Can you explain the fourth turning?
So the extreme Cliff's Notes version is that there were two authors named William Strauss and Neil Howe who collaborated on a project in the late 1980s and early 90s to do a history of American generations in depth. They spent about 3 years writing a book of just that ended up being a sequence of generational biographies all the way back to the original Puritans who founded the first English settlements. And what they noticed was that every 80 to 100 years, there were certain types of generations, personality-wise, in terms of life experience, temperament, things that they contributed to either civic institutions or the culture, social trends, whatever it was, that there were certain archetypes of generations that repeated every 80 to 100 years, and that aligning with this, there seemed to be a recurring pattern in certain big social, cultural, and political changes in America over the same time pattern every 80 to 100 years. And so they said, well, it looks from this that generational change is a big driving factor in why American history has changed the way it has. And based upon this, they predicted in the early 1990s that America was going to be going through another era like the Revolution, the Civil War, and the Great Depression, World War II, again, sometime around the year 2020. They have been proven right about this. And many, many, many people have chimed in, having read this book, having delved into the summaries of it, to try to essentially extrapolate from the Cliff's Notes of their theory what's coming next, when will this era be over, when will things be normal again. And having gone way down the rabbit hole of this, but also just having other reasons for being passionate about it, my concern is, okay, yes, they've been proving right about a lot of things. They were also wrong about a lot of specific things, and even wrong about some general things that mean that this basic idea of the relationship between big historical change and generational change needs to be enhanced, needs to be made accessible to people who haven't come across the idea before, and most importantly of all, needs to be updated to the present. It can't remain stuck in the 1990s, 1991 or 1997, which is when they published their most famous book, The Fourth Turning. So I've spent the last 6 years working on this as kind of a pet project, and it's at over 2,000 subscribers now. Wow. So it's been very rewarding to produce some work that people like about it.
So you would say that moment for this generation would have been COVID?
Well, that's an interesting, in a sense, yes. In another sense, COVID's just part of a bigger pattern. So Neil Howe's basic contention, he's the one of the two co-authors who's still alive and whose opinions about this people seek out continuously. His contention is that this era, called a fourth turning, began with the global financial crisis in 2008, and that these are eras, these are not events, these are eras that last, on average, approximately 20 years. So we have, if Neil is correct, and I believe he is, that this era, this current fourth turning for America began with the global financial crisis 16, 17 years ago, we've probably got somewhere between 8 and 10 years to go, maybe as little as 5, but the crucial point is we have 2 election cycles as Republicans, as conservatives, as liberty-minded people to shore up our positions so that the left does not run roughshod over the parts of the country and the parts of our institutions that they've either lost control of or that they don't control yet, because their whole modus operandi for over half a century has been tear America down and rebuild it according to what we think is right and good, and take power away from ordinary people. We're at a very serious moment, as Mike was saying before, in not just the life of our country, but in the process of this period these authors called the fourth turning 30 years ago. And if we don't do our part, we could lose everything.
Yeah.
How about we go back to like what Citizen DOGE is, like
It's
the
a happier
real
subject.
the real purpose. Like I know you're going to events and you're trying to
Can you get a little
network
closer to the mic, Brett?
and you're trying to network with people. Are you like generating like a how-to, or like here's some
template?
Yeah, like here's how you go in and find all these things on the local level. Like, what have you begun doing any of that? Like, how do you do like 91A requests and what to look for, what to ask for?
Yeah, I can jump in and if you want to jump in after. So we had we'll say a friend or a colleague in another group that was going. She went to her town. She was door knocking, phone calling, getting public pressure on some budget cuts and school board issues, and they ended up getting like 900 people to show up to a school board meeting. They got $4 million struck out of their budget. And so she's been going around teaching people, other groups, how to do it. And we've partnered with her. She came to our first meeting and spoke about it. And we're working on trying to get something that you can extrapolate. She showed up at my town GOP as well, that we can take some ideas and extrapolate them to other towns and just plug and play. We had a gentleman, part of our group, went to his school board and got $5,000 taken out. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it was a very small town. And they were spending $5,000 on a limo to
bus to Logan.
Yeah, sending kids to Logan Airport, and it's like, really, like, can you maybe rent a school bus for a few hundred, or like, why do you need to rent a limo?
You rented a limo?
Yeah, like, hey, that's not bad,
But why are they sending kids to the airport?
I don't know, school field trip or whatever. Who knows? Jeez. But there's all these like little things, and then even my town, they spend $1 million a year on the library. And most towns, you don't have a library, but it's like, how many people are using this library anymore? And actually, the Democrats are doing the transsexual story times and stuff like that. So they're using the library against us at this point. So it's like, well, if you don't want to get rid of the library, there's other ways maybe to fund it. Maybe you can look at fundraising or endowments, or, if people want a library, just contribute to it. Why do we need to spend taxpayer money on all? I'm not just saying that one thing, but, you delve into all this stuff. So to answer your question, we're getting people out in the field. Like I said, we started this about 2 months ago. So, right. And there's so much corruption. It's like this would take us a lifetime with just me and Andy to do it. So that's why we need more people to get involved. So the basic premise is get people involved, show up at your school board meetings, show up at your city councilor meetings, run for office if that's something you want to do. So just that's a basic, simple, get people involved. And then we're aggregating stories. Like, someone will submit a story. Someone submitted a request the other day, hey, get eyes on this. So we're having people come and speak at our events, what they found, or, hey, I went to my school board and this is what I said and this is what happened. And then so these stories can help other people, like, aggregate the whole and make a bigger picture, and kind of, we learn as we go kind of thing as well, because obviously the DOGE is the federal stuff, and it's like, but how do we go dig deep into these towns? And, people are doing it. And we want to reach out to these people and have everybody kind of build a discussion around this of how they're doing it and what's happening and what people are seeing on the ground.
And the crucial point is, we started just over a month ago, and we've already been privy to, either stories such as the one about the Amherst Library, that there are these line items that are just unbelievable about, preserving or shoring up their town libraries or something that should not cost seven figures. And even in a case of Mike from Wilton, who's a good friend of ours and part of our team at Citizens DOGE, to find $5,000 out of his town budget that needed to be looked into and has now been stricken from the budget, going to one town council meeting. Just from that alone, and just from hearsay we're getting from some other people about similar things, we have no idea how big the iceberg really is, but it's got to be enormous. And this is just New Hampshire. This country, it is positively endemic. We've seen it just from the work we've done over the last month and the people we've talked to, and that's part of the message we want to drive home, is that only if people continually engage with their towns and their local communities to figure out exactly what's going on or follow through on things that they think are going on that are not right, can we begin to return this to a situation where we all agree that government is on the level again.
I would say that iceberg's about $37 trillion big.
Well, it's bigger than that.
Yeah, once you figure
all
it all,
the municipalities and the states across the country, and that bomb's probably like 3 times that.
I think that the 2008 financial crisis, what you were talking about being the start of that fourth turning, is that we really just prolonged a larger financial crisis, and it's going to be so much more massive now.
It's 0% interest rates for over 10 years.
Yeah, it's unsustainable. And we don't know what it's going to look like. Have we ever had a reserve currency just collapse? And what's the outcome going to be?
Probably in some ancient civilizations, I'd have to dig deeper into the.
Well, you see Rome and you see other empires that are falling. Yeah,
there's recent examples of currency collapsing that you can just look to.
Well, Venezuela,
Zimbabwe,
right?
Venezuela, Weimar Germany.
Yeah, but those didn't cover the whole world.
Cover
the whole world.
Full resort. Okay.
Yeah, the U.S. dollar. Everybody uses the U.S. dollar.
Yeah,
and
if that collapses, the carnage.
It's not just going to be us.
It's not just going to be us. It's going to be bad here. It's going to be even worse, I think, in other countries, because I think that our inflation rate was the only reason why the dollar didn't collapse is because our inflation rate didn't outpace
theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this dovetails quickly. I'll just mention somebody who has been a big influence on me that I recommend to you all of you, and to anybody listening to your show. There was a gentleman named Angelo Codevilla who was a writer for American Mind and some other right-leaning publications, who had a past in government as well as some of the more prestigious universities in the country, who passed away a few years ago, but was the single most brilliant person I've ever found talking about the American ruling class, and his basis for why he wanted to paint a portrait of this class of people that's run our country for a long time was their response to the financial crisis in 2008. That the new administration coming in, Obama and his people, and the Republicans in Congress, they fought over a lot of things, but the one thing that they absolutely believed in almost to a person was the system as it existed had to be maintained in its present form no matter what. And so that was what was really behind the bailouts of the banks and the bailouts of the auto companies. And it seemed, I'm sure to many people, the right move at the time, but there was an enormous cost to it. And this gentleman, Codevilla, was the single most brilliant person I've ever found at diagnosing why these people, these ruling class people, made these decisions and who they are and how they see the country and how they've hurt the country.
And they benefited the most from it, too.
Yes.
Yeah, and then just to finish, why you said, what kind of DOGE actions we're doing. And as we talk about kind of there's so much going on in every level of every state, and so the message I want to get out there is, we need to just get people involved. Right now, it's literally me and Andy and a ragtag group of concerned citizens. It's like, people are like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? It's like, we need to help. And that was the same thing with like showing up at events, right? We can't just do it with 6 people and fix every single town and every, all these things. We need people to join us, help us, anyone brighter minds in this. Like I said, I worked on a campaign. Andy worked on a campaign. We're not financial people. We're not lawyers. We don't pretend to be. We don't have any federal DOGE powers, but we're just concerned citizens that want to look into these things. So if people have like CPAs or lawyers or people, and I know there's been some CPAs that have showed up at school boards and, people that have more experience in these things, we're not claiming to be experts on the subject. We just want to get people involved. So if anyone has, or you guys know people that have experience or have done some deep dives and stuff, certainly come our way. We can talk, we can have them speak, we can share. I mean, we're not claiming to have the answer for everything, but we're trying to build this ecosystem of sharing and learning and just, as we go, keep improving, fine-tuning things, say, hey, this worked at this school board, this didn't work at this school board, or this, this worked here and this budget thing here. And then we can fine-tune this message until we eventually get to a point where we can go into a town and say, okay, boom, 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 and just budgets do. And then we need to also, part of the whole thing and why it's not just basically specific on DOGE cuts is because, as we were talking about, we have larger problems, right? It's not just enough anymore to just say, oh, there's some fraud over here and strike it from the budget. We need to remove the people that are causing these frauds and abuses and these entrenched politicians or someone on a school board for 40 years. So we need to also get candidates involved and get people to run for local office. I know it's not glamorous. People have the shiny presidential stuff and they forget about, as we talked about earlier in the podcast, they forget about these local races. You forget about this for 40 years and then all of a sudden you're like, oh God, we have this massive problem. So we need to chip away. Like I said, even, we did one thing for 5,000. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but we got to start somewhere, right? So we got to start chipping away. And the town that got $4 million, I mean, that was really good. And this was before any of the DOGE stuff. It was just a concerned citizen. She was doing DOGE before the DOGE happened. And so we've kind of partnered with them some stuff. So this is the thing. We're aggregating everyone together and just chipping away this ice block. So we need help. That's kind of the bigger thing. We need experienced people to join and people to get involved and do something.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough enough to get people to go to the Republican.
Yeah, we have 23 members, and
and that's kind of the bigger problem we see everywhere, right?
It was hard
everyone
to even
needs
get
help.
the 23 to fill it out. Like we had to basically beg like a member from last time,
begging people to get involved. It's sad.
To re-sign
really
up. Yeah,
a lot of people don't want to deal with it.
Yeah,
they
might think it's overwhelming. Like, oh, my school is.
They don't know how they can help.
Yeah.
That's why I think like we need to come up with like here's how to do it.
And I wish there was a great answer for that.
Work,
maybe we can.
But you got to motivate people, and then once you motivate them, you have to give them something to do. Because I think a lot of people want to do something, they just don't know how.
100%.
And it's really difficult. Because sometimes I'm like, I don't know, just come to meetings and let's figure it out together.
And I was on a conversation earlier with someone speaking about. So some of these grassroots movements, they did, not sure if you guys did it up here, but there was people that would do like the flag waves in the Trump trains and but they wouldn't do the specific campaign things. Like, so obviously working on campaigns, we did a lot of door knocking phone calls, the traditional campaign metrics, but we had a lot of people that, like you said, like, oh, I don't want to do that, or, oh, my knees hurt, or I don't like talking to people, whatever, but I'll go wave this flag outside for, in the middle of January, right? Mm-hmm. Or drive my car around the whole state wasting $300 in gas and flags and all this stuff, but I can't knock a door and make a phone call. And I get it. We gotta meet people where they are. And in the beginning, it kind of got upset. It's like, we need to knock doors. We need to get out there. But eventually I realized, like, we just need to meet people where they are. And, if somebody says, hey, I can't knock doors, my knee hurts or whatever, or elderly person, it's like, okay, but what can you do? Instead of just saying, okay, no problem, and we move on to someone else, it's like, what can you do? Can you show up to a meeting? Can you write an email? Can you make an op-ed?
Sure.
Can you, so these are different things we can think about, and just it's not an all one thing. It's like not, hey, you need to show up to a school board meeting. You need to do this. It's intimidating for some people. But the thing is, we get people involved and start doing it. It does create a ripple saying, oh, wow, this guy, like our guy, Mike, that works with us, he's like, I've never been to a school board meeting before, but I'm just going to go and find out. He went his first time. He didn't know what the heck he was doing. He got the 5,000 taken out. It's like, now he's going around telling people, hey, just come with me. So next time he goes to a school board meeting, he might show up with 4 or 5 people. And they might say, oh, look at this. And so that's the thing. We got to create the momentum, excitement, but then meet people where they're at as well and say, okay, if this is what you can do, we'll take it. It's better than nothing at this point.
Right.
Do you think people are scared of personal attacks too?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. There's definitely many different reasons for this.
How much of that do you think how much of a reception do you get when it comes to people saying that, like, I don't want to get involved, I don't want to get attacked? Because, I mean, people do get personally attacked all the time. I mean, if you go and say you want to cut the school budget,
100%. Yeah,
we have
you know these people, right? They're your neighbors,
yeah.
especially in your local town.
right? And
Yeah, it can get
Like
testy.
you're the worst person on the planet.
we have a state rep
Protect the children.
in Carroll County, and he, Glenn Cordelli, he was the first one that I interviewed for this podcast, and
Great.
he has personal attacks all the time.
Yeah,
And
it's sad. Yeah.
that was one of the
It's like almost comical, like
Oh,
how
yeah.
absurd they are too, the attacks. But like most people don't know who he is, so they're like, oh, okay, like this person's always spouting off, so maybe they're right. I don't know.
yeah.
Because they had just an example, they had like a talk at the library or maybe the local church about it was a victim of the Holocaust came and spoke.
Wow.
The haters said they're holding a Nazi rally.
The haters? How is there haters?
well,
of
well,
that?
the people that just hate Glenn, they're not going to ever tell the truth.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, he had a victim.
Yeah.
No, he had a Nazi rally. And it's just like,
Yeah.
okay.
The victim's now the perpetrator. Sorry.
And didn't you tell me that they had without naming the publication, there was a newspaper that put out a story about him on April Fool's Day?
Yeah. Yeah. And they called for what was stoning. So a like ritual public
lynching.
execution.
Oh God,
And they're like, well, that's funny. I'm like, how's that funny?
that's
Explain-
not funny because
explain
someone
the
will take
humor
that
to me.
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, not funny anymore.
And then
yeah.
I was just like, then they actually, the publication was like, where are you? Like, we'd like to do a story on you. I'm like, you're actually just trying to, in a way, like dox me or to like threaten me by being like, we're going to put your name out there as like somebody that's upset with us.
And that's the intimidation that
Yeah.
intimidation factor. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just
Absolutely.
like, I'm not even talking to you.
Because I think we're entering a time in our country where it's getting to be fairly I mean, we have political violence all the time now. I feel like, I mean, the George Floyd riots were the real pop off of that. I mean, you can go back 2014 with, I think it was 14 with when BLM first started.
Ferguson and all
Ferguson,
that. Yeah.
right?
We talked about this the other day. Occupy was like Occupy movement, all these different
That was
movements. that popped up.
2008. Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of
And-
just progressively got worse over time, right?
Yeah.
These movements became more radical, more dangerous,
Where
what more funded. Yeah.
and the younger generations are getting more and more exposed to it. But I feel like the next generation, the kids maybe that were real young during COVID, they're starting to get older now. I think that they're starting to see more of the I guess what would you call it, the facade of the media, because everything's on the internet. So these politicians that are screaming about these Doge cuts, or they're screaming about immigration, go back 15, 20 years ago, and they said the same things. So you can see that in real time now, from 15 to in the Wayback Machine, the internet. So these younger kids are probably going to be getting exposed to that, and homeschooling's on the rise because of COVID. And I think that COVID they shot themselves in the foot.
They went too far with that one. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically because they wanted to win the 2020 election, I think.
Mhm.
But the intimidation factor of it is what's really keeping people at home and keeping people from participating. And if you look back in history, like the Russian Revolution, that was the official start of it was 1917. But if you look back in the early 1900s, the universities were just having demonstration after demonstration, and that was what fermented into what we saw, what we know now as the Russian Revolution. So what we're seeing going on with Occupy Wall Street in 2008, those people that were young and mad and upset over all these bailouts for all these corporations and banks, those people are what, in their 30s now? So those people, the AOCs of today, they don't see a future for themselves, I don't think. So we have a populist movement on both sides where you have the blue-collar Trump voters who aren't seeing the same standard of living that like their parents saw. and then you have the people our age and younger, where some of us are on the right, some of us are on the left, but the people that are on the left, they are seeing, they just think that the system is rigged because that's what they're told against them, and but they're not entirely wrong.
I was about to say it is rigged. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
If we have another financial crisis, which we're going to have, they're just going to print more money, and they're just going to give it to banks and special interests, just like they did in COVID. Now we're $37 trillion in debt. Now a pickup truck costs $60,000, where it used to cost $30,000.
Yeah,
$40,000.
the work truck.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
A house that cost $120,000 is now $250,000. A starter home.
Like, where are we going to get to? Yeah, it's scary. You know, you could have $1 million and you could get you a 2-bedroom or something. At some point, it's like,
Well, what person getting out of college or maybe a couple years out of college is going to afford anything?
oh yeah, you can't even afford an apartment or a studio. I mean, it's bizarre. And then not only that, you have your college debt that you're now paying. So you have debt you're already paying, then the inflation you can't. So you're living with mommy and daddy, but eventually, like if mommy and daddy run out of money or they're living off Social Security, it's like, yeah, it's getting to a point. Like you said, I mean, we can't keep continuing this. Like adding more debt eventually is just gonna cause inflation through the roof, and it's gonna be
This
tough.
is a generation.
People not forming families and
Yeah, people
living
aren't having
in-
kids, you
living in
can't.
despair and like there's no future for them. And if you feel like there's no future for you, then you might become nihilistic. And,
Exactly.
Which
you
is
know, which is happening.
Which I think, and that's something that when I first delved into the ideas we talked about before, it was like really helpful for me to understand, well, this doesn't necessarily make me happy knowing that the difficult things I went through in my life in my 20s were because, you know, we're living in a time of extraordinary political and economic turmoil. But it was like, well, at least I understood it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hit the real world. I graduated from college in 2008, and I worked for 2 weeks at a little retailer, you know, selling running shoes, and I lost my job the day after the Dow Jones fell 800 points, and suddenly it was like my whole world went up in smoke, and it was that was the genesis of my interest in all of this stuff. Is like, why does it feel like the world, the country is in chaos, and I don't get it? Well, at least this idea makes some sense of it, so I can at least feel like I have my feet on the ground and I don't succumb to total nihilism. And that's, for me, I think that's one of the practical values of understanding this whole idea of historical cycles, is that however crazy the world might be, you can at least gain some level of understanding if you reflect back on your own life and the experiences and testimonials of other people. You know, things probably are the way they are for a reason. And if our leaders and our politicians have made bad decisions that have hurt the standard of living of those of us who are on the younger side of things, like, you know, at some level we have to recognize it, but also take action ourselves and know that nobody's coming to save us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like, it's a generational thing. It was generation after generation that got us here. And at some point, we're not going to be able to just continue the same practices. I read that book like 3 or 4 years ago, and everything that I heard, I wasn't surprised by, because I've tried to be as open-minded and try to educate myself about history. Because if you want to understand what's coming, you have to know what's happened in the past. You got to know what other countries have gone through. And I think America is unique because there's never been a country like us that's just been all over the globe. We're considered the world police, and we've been trying to keep that stature up for however long. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, I think we got cocky, and we overextended ourselves. And that was probably one of the best times to be alive, is the late 90s, the 90s. I mean,
Pretty good.
and after that, things have just been kind of getting worse and worse and worse.
The late 90s for sure. I was a young kid in the early 90s, but I think of the early 90s as kind of being a dark time, especially in the culture. There was some great music that came out during that time, but I think sometimes the whole decade of the 90s gets kind of a glossy, or gets a sort of a rosy glow to it. The later 90s, though, in retrospect, even though there were a lot of people angry about a number of things, and Columbine, I don't know how old everybody here was when Columbine happened. I was 13 when that happened. That was a huge event. If you were not alive during Columbine, I don't think you can appreciate just how massive it was. And But
that kind of
that's
tipped
a
off like
longer
the school
conversation.
shooting stuff, and that kind of
I remember
brought more of the violence.
We had like a big assembly at school, like I don't know, a few days after that happened, and
Around that time, though, is when they started the 24-hour news cycle too.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
And they say that music can affect people. So if you're listening to like grunge music back in the early 90s, like if you were one of those grunge people, you probably looked at the people in the 80s as just being like, the big hair and all that, like, ugh. But then if you're like a younger millennial or Gen Xer, you probably look at grunge as being like, oh, why are you guys so sad? You know?
Well, I'll put it to you guys. How old are you guys?
I'm 38.
Okay.
I'm almost 43.
Okay, so I think we may all be in the same
35.
generation.
Yeah.
These guys say that millennials, our generation started in 82, and they give a lot of reasons for that. And the basic core reason is that 82 were the birth cohort of babies. For what it's worth, I'm 39. I was born in 85.
I was born in 82.
Is that 82 was the first cohort of babies? You were one of the first.
I don't feel like I'm a millennial. I feel closer to like Gen X people a lot of the times.
Definitely, I think those of us who hit our early 20s before 2008 probably feel like we're on the cusp a little bit, and maybe even extending all the way through the 80s. I think we do feel older than a lot of younger people a lot of the time. But 82 is when this new approach to parenting that was like a reaction against the hands-off, just let kids roam free, Goonies-style parenting of the 70s and very early 80s suddenly became completely out of fashion, at least for young kids. I could see from the time I was very, very young that, I have a lot of family members who are quite a bit older than I am, not my parents' age, but in between. And I always knew that I was very different from them and they were very different from me. And so what these guys had to say about the basis for generational differences, it struck a chord with me immediately. And I knew that, there's a reason our generation is going through the things that we're going through as young adults. Our archetype in history has typically experienced periods like this when we've been young.
Yeah.
I think that one way moving forward would be to teach the younger generations. You have to pretty much open their eyes to, do you ever want to own a home? Do you ever want to have a family? Do you not want to be in debt? If you're in debt, you're getting up every single day to pay interest for money that you've borrowed. So we need to teach kids the Dave Ramsey way, I think, of paying cash for everything. And we need to bring down college education costs, which means we have to stop subsidizing it, I think. And that's part of the way of moving forward. The younger kids, we need to teach them that if you ever want to own anything, you can't rely on the government to be taking care of you. But that's the world that we're living in now. Families really can't get by without the government.
And this gets into so much of what we talked about, the narrative and how the left believes they have control of it for all the reasons they believe that. Any and all bad news that, whether it can be pinned on somebody or not, that happens to the country between now and the end of this current presidential term is, of course, going to be pinned on the current administration, which is just another narrative grab that they can have to, if something happens in the economy in the next year, the narrative push by the mainstream media and the Democrats is going to be ferocious that, this administration did this to the economy because of X, Y, and Z and all the things that Trump has been doing. Whether there's any substantive evidence to prove that or not, they're going to seize the high ground. And so that makes messaging even more critical for us now, because any control that the Democrats can muster for any reason will lead to them getting more control over the federal government, which will filter all the way down through the states and through all the localities. And what we're doing is trying to shore up in whatever way we can the localities here in New Hampshire now, in addition to the other things that we're doing, so that they just have a little bit less of a grip on the narrative, regardless of what may happen in the future.
And when things go negative, when Democrats are in charge, it's always dismissed. So using the Wayback Machine, the internet, we need to start showing people, and they'll call it whataboutism when you say, well, when this was happening, whataboutism. But it's true. The media is controlled by a small group of people, and everything you see is paid for on TV and now on the internet, I'd say. That we just need to not convince people, but just show people that it doesn't matter who's in charge. Things are moving forward because the way that they have been for the last several decades, because that's just the way that they want it to go. And if we want to have change, there needs to be local involvement. And what you guys are doing is great. How many people do you have in your organization right now?
I'd say between different meetings that people showed up, I'd say about 50 or 60 people that, and then we're gaining followers every day online. I had someone from Laconia sign up or in different places. So it seems like it's getting a reach throughout the state. And that's why we're coming up to this way. Obviously I live in Southern New Hampshire, but I'm trying to reach out to GOPs all across the state because it's not just in my local area.
And are you guys strictly in New Hampshire, or are you guys going to expand?
So that's interesting. So the name is Citizens DOGE. It can be really, obviously we're in New Hampshire, but
be anywhere.
I've had other states reach out. What about Citizens DOGE Massachusetts or Citizens DOGE New York or whatever it is. I want to get a blueprint done here and see some results happening here. Mm-hmm. And that will obviously drive force from other states to reach out. I mean, we've had many groups reaching out here in this state, but as we expand, and that's part of it, why we're going to events and just getting the name and outreach, and we need to get the word out. I had someone yesterday go to a big flag wave in Laconia. I think it was Laconia or Plymouth, maybe it might have been Plymouth, and they haven't heard of our group. And they're like, "Oh, that's really cool." So there is an outreach aspect of what we're trying to do. And it can spread to other states for sure eventually. But we don't want a blueprint here that we can now pass the buck, or they can be part of our organization, just have like chapters, similar like a chapter, a Citizens DOGE chapter here, Citizens chapter DOGE here. Yeah.
Nice. Yep. So where can everybody find all your info? Your social media links?
Yep. So we have a Facebook page. We just got a TikTok. So it's Citizens DOGE on Facebook, Citizens DOGE USA on X. Our TikTok, I believe, is Citizens DOGE. Our email is citizensdoge@gmail.com. So people can send us tips, join our movement, however they want to do it on the email. And then we have a website, citizensdoge@citizensdoge.com. Sorry.
And is there anything else you guys want to?
Just want to let everybody know that we are going to be at the Belknap County Committee Cruise tonight on the Mount Washington. For what it's worth, I used to work on the Mount Washington, so that'll be a special occasion for me, way in the past. And want to also point out that we are currently doing a weekly podcast with Julian Aceyard. I always want to make sure I get his last name right. Julian Aceyard on Blue Collar Intellectual. Tuesday afternoons, 4 p.m. It live streams on X. I'm not sure if it live streams on Facebook. I know it live streams on X. And we may be looking to perhaps have some studio time in that studio in the future. We won't presume yet, but for now, Julian has been very kind to us, giving us some time at 4 o'clock Tuesdays and reading the Citizens DOGE report to apprise everybody of the events and other tips that events we've been going to, tips we've been getting, and just how we're sort of growing and getting our message out.
How about you, Brett? You got anything you want to mention?
Well, thanks for having me. The Carroll County Republican Committee, we usually meet every Wednesday, or the first Wednesday of every month. We try to move around the county. If you're interested, please come. We'd love to have more people helping out. We have a golf event in September, and we're about to do a gun raffle pretty soon here in the next week or so. It's going to be pretty cool. It's Q Firearms. It's a sugar weasel with a silencer, and they're made in Dover. It's going to be awesome. So look out for that. And I guess our website is www.carrollcountyrepublicans.org. And I hope that, we stay in touch. And I like what you're doing. I think maybe we could not, be linked up, but we could kind of help each other out where we can in the future, and look forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have kind of a format of how we're doing it with different groups, so you don't have to physically be aligned with us, but we can coordinate in the background. And Andy was mentioning, so we have this kind of Citizens DOGE report. It's like a 5-minute news segment on the local happenings. So any kind of events that you guys are doing, you can send our way, and we can promote it on our channels and our groups as well.
Great.
So it's kind of just aggregating stuff together and
'cause I feel
getting
like
messages out.
getting people excited and to even know that there's a Carroll County Republican Committee. Like, most Republicans are like, oh, they don't even know about it. They didn't know that it exists. And it's just like, yeah, come help, And I think that's the biggest problem is activating people,
Awareness,
notifying them and activating them and getting them to show up. And I think if we all maybe work together with the grassroots and stuff like that, we could.
I think the tax increases that people have been feeling been helping fire people up.
Yeah, well, we got to direct that anger.
Yeah, into something productive.
Yeah.
And I think Citizens DOGE is a great opportunity.
I think it would be great.
Yeah, and that's part of it too. Me and Andy are always deliberating like different ways to get people involved. So that's why we're doing unique events, unique fundraisers. We went to a Christian dance party over in Hampton, just bringing a younger crowd, Christian crowd. So we're always looking for new, unique events and just tapping into. And we're, like I said, we're partnering with Turning Point, so it's going to be getting the colleges. So, it's looking to different ways to get people involved instead of just showing up to a GOP meeting and sit there for 2 hours. And it's like we need some excitement building,
Yeah, I mean, I understand. Like, if you're the first time showing up to the GOP meeting, like, we've been working on things, and then you show up and you're like,
they don't know what's going on. They don't know anyone in the room. Yeah, so it's hard to just get like a newcomer. Hey, show to this meeting.
Some people are like, oh, I'm going to go there and we're going to do stuff. And it's just like, well, it doesn't always work that way. Like, we kind of talk about what we should have been doing the previous month when you go to a meeting, like we're trying to set up subcommittees. So it's like the work kind of like happens before the meeting, and then you kind of report on it, and people can discuss a plan of action, and so the meetings aren't always as exciting. And I think some people, you look at their face, a first-time person, they're kind of like just looking around the room like, what the heck?
Yeah, so we're just trying to bring some life into this and get people excited and find other ways to, do things than the conventional way that's been doing so far.
Yeah.
Were there a lot of people at that Christian dance that you went to?
Yeah, there was maybe 30, 40 people showed up. I don't know.
Yeah.
People in and out, but yeah, it was
They're saying that
close
Christianity is on the rise with young people.
Yeah.
Which is a good sign that
Absolutely.
people are really starting to. We're going to have.
Sorry.
You okay over there?
Yeah.
We're going to have, I think, a moment in the next 20 years where things will start changing, where what we've seen that's been the status quo our whole lives isn't going to be the future. And we have a good opportunity to really bring people on board with having fiscal responsibility and not starting unnecessary wars all over the country, all over the world, and making the standard of living what it used to be in the United States. I mean, this is still the best place on earth to live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's going to go one way or the other, and that's kind of where we're at. It's like we're coming to a precipice where things are going to drastically get better or they're drastically going to get worse. And there's not really, because we can't just keep passing the buck and keep this status quo going forever, right? There's going to be, the dollar's going to collapse or something, or war's going to break out. Something is going to happen, or the people are going to rise up and take back power.
Mm-hmm.
So we're obviously on the side of good in creating a positive change, and we need people to get involved and make sure it's the latter, not the former.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for coming.
Yeah. Nice to meet you guys.
Appreciate you guys having us. It's been great.
All right. Thank you, everyone.